The following content contains personal experiences of our hosts and guests. We are not experts in this matter. We encourage challenging conversations with others and to achieve healing from our childhood. We hope to connect and allow a safe space to have an open discussion. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment.
Happy Lunar New Year,
Happy
everyone.
Lunar New Year. Welcome back to another First Gen podcast. Thank you for tuning in. So good to have you guys back on another episode.
Year of the Snake. Yeah.
Year of the Snake. This is the sixth animal, I think, in the zodiac.
Maybe
in the Chinese.
Should
let me just
I
think that's what the sixth animal in the Chinese zodiac, the snake. It says here symbolizes complexity, mystery, and transformation.
So like a rebirth transformation.
Yes,
I like that.
Yeah.
We could all use that.
We can all use that in our lives, because the snake is all about shedding. They shed that layer. What I read here is shedding that bad energy. It's a time to let go of anything that no longer serves your well-being.
Yes.
You hear that? Go ahead and shed this year of the snake. Shedding that old layer to finally transform to the greatness you are. It is a time to wake up and rise into that frequency that replenishes and resonates with your soul.
Amazing.
So
I love it.
Very much reading that, I was like, this connected with me so much. Best
Same.
believe, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So happy Lunar New Year.
All right, First Gen podcast listeners, welcome back. I hope everyone is having a great start to the new year. I know there's been some fires in LA. Hopefully everyone is safe, and our thoughts are with you. And so excited to introduce you to our guest, Moody, here. Funny story. So we just met very recently, actually.
Yes, yeah.
I went to go see a friend of mine who was bartending on New Year's Eve. And I had my laptop, I was doing some work while having some drinks, and Moody just happened to be sitting next to me. And he goes, "Are you really working on New Year's Eve?" I'm like, life of an entrepreneur, yes. But we got into a wonderful conversation about just being first gen Americans. So you told me a little bit about your story, which I think is really exciting and interesting. So I'd love for you to share that today. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. I guess a little bit of a introduction. So I'm Moody. I just randomly met Nina on New Year's Eve. So it was actually very random. So I was born in Bangladesh, and I came to Canada when I was 5 years old. Right. So most of my life, I grew up in Canada, went to school there, went to college there, worked there for a bit. And then a few years ago, I decided to do my master's in the U.S. So I came to LA to study at UCLA. And mainly coming to the U.S. was for career reasons. So I work after I got my master's, now I work as a data scientist. And so, that field is a lot bigger, a lot better in the US compared to Canada. So then I chose to come and work here. And then after I came here, I really liked it. Just decided to stay and, become a permanent resident. So I just recently got my green card. So.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Moody, I'm so excited that you're on the pod and open to chatting with us with with your upbringing, because that is so cool to hear your journey and the different countries you've already been to, and learning the different cultures. That's the part I think that piques my curiosity too, is like the differences of coming to Canada. Which part of Canada?
So I was in Toronto. So
Okay.
pretty much all the time that I've been in Canada, it was in Toronto.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, curious to know if your culture was brought to Canada, and how did you and your family navigate
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So we're actually, I guess, compared to a lot of the immigrants that I meet here, we're more of the recent, like 21st century immigrants, so to speak. So, like my parents, they came from Bangladesh on like in like a skilled immigrant category. So my family back there, fairly educated, relatively well off. Um, they had like pretty good opportunities and stuff, and then they sort of brought that over, right? Whatever they had, they brought that over to Canada to essentially just have like um, a slightly better life in terms of just overall quality of life. Giving me slightly more opportunities.
Right.
And then so the upbringing I had, they actually brought in a lot of their culture, and they like at home we spoke Bengali, so I'm fluent in Bengali.
Nice.
I did a little bit of school in Bangladesh as a kid, so I like learned to. I learned like the alphabet in the language, and it's like so after coming to Canada, we actually went back to visit Bangladesh fairly frequently. My grandparents came to visit us. We had aunts and uncles visit us, and then over time, more and more of our extended family immigrated to Canada. So from our like extended family, me and my parents were the first ones, but then over like a period of 20 years or so, like more and more of our family members came. So now we have a lot of family, in and around Toronto, actually.
Pioneers. You guys are the pioneers that
Yeah.
brought the whole family. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, but it was like I'm definitely Canadian, socially and culturally speaking, but there is a good mix of Bengali. The language I'm pretty fluent in. My grandparents, they made an effort to make sure I can like read a little bit. I can probably read at like a second grade level.
Hey, that's still good.
Yeah, definitely.
Bilingual, trilingual, any
Yeah.
aspect of it.
And then
That's awesome.
sort of like going back to visit as a kid to kind of get myself immersed there. Playing with my cousins and stuff when I went back there. I'm like compared to a lot of other immigrant children who come at a young age, I'd say I'm relatively well connected to there.
I love that.
Nice. That's amazing. Are there any like traditions your family still practices, and are there like a community that they're able to connect with in
Yeah.
Toronto?
Yeah, so Toronto's like pretty multicultural, like similar to LA. I'd argue even more multicultural because Toronto has much more recent immigrants than here. Like, so say when I was working, like you'd hear people like, "Oh, I just came here like a month ago or a week ago." There's a lot of new immigrants, so especially recently. So yeah, and Bengali community there is pretty big, and then they like Toronto's interesting where like the immigrant communities get big enough where you have like little subgroups of immigrant communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in terms of traditions, so Bangladesh is like a majority Muslim country, but we're culturally more similar to like other countries in South Asia. So not necessarily like the Middle East. So like we celebrate Eid and stuff. Right, that's kind of our main holiday in the family, but we do it in a more like Bengali way. So like the food and the traditions and the outfits and stuff. Yeah, we do it in a Bengali way. So that's kind of like the main tradition we brought over, and then a little bit of like Bengali New Year, I guess that happens like in April. So that it's not as big as Eid, but it is also like another tradition that we
Right.
follow.
I did do a little research last night with the New Year, because like I realized there's a lot of cultures that celebrate the New Year at a different part of
Yeah.
the calendar year. You know, and just like recently, Lunar New Year.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like celebrating in April. I was like, that's even later than,
Yeah.
you know. So it's like spring, almost spring
Yeah.
awakening right there.
Yeah, that's more of, so it's not a lunar New Year. It's so Bangladesh and that whole region has like monsoons, so you get a lot of rain and flooding that like helps with the agriculture and stuff. So it's like the season right before the rains come. So rains come in May, and so like April is like the time before the rains.
Nice.
And what is how do you celebrate that? I mean, is it like a big celebration? Is there like a parade? Or like
Yes.
food and
Yeah, so in Bangladesh, they have like a pretty big celebration with the parade and all of that. Overseas, it's usually like Bengali communities, they kind of get together and then they just have kind of like a little fair with maybe some like singing or dancing and some like food and stuff.
What's your favorite thing to eat during that holiday? Is there a
Um,
go-to,
so
food item that's like, you gotta try this?
okay, so I might be biased, but so like my mom is like known for making the best like party food.
all right.
uh,
When's the next party at your
Yeah.
house?
Yeah. in our family. So the Bengali food, I like the street food type stuff that you can get at fairs. So in Bengali, it's called like chotpoti or fuska. Those are kind of like, if you're familiar with Indian food, right? Like it's kind of like those lentil or chickpeas in like a sort of like a spicy sauce with tamarind in it.
Okay.
So
Yum.
Sounds good.
Tamarind. Love.
Yeah. Same.
And it's spice.
yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
take the heat. Would you say that's like your favorite holiday to celebrate with your family? Or
Yeah,
if
I mean,
there's
I don't have a favorite holiday per se. Like, so Eid is like the biggest holiday. Like, that's kind of where it's like, okay, everyone gets together. We like, people get new presents and like, people have a lot of food, right? And then that holiday, the New Year is more just going out to like the fair. So yeah, so I mean, like, I like spending time with my family, so I don't really have a a holiday preference.
As long as you gather together and celebrate
And
with family.
there's food.
And food.
Food brings
Yeah.
people together.
I think that's a lot of cultures. That's like the common thread right there.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
For sure.
How do your family or family members or yourself balance maintaining like the Bengali culture while adapting into, Toronto, for instance?
Yeah, so I guess I'd say nowadays it's pretty easy. So like if you've traveled around the world to like Asia and stuff, like um or pretty much anywhere around the world, like most cities have modernized quite a bit. So my family is from like Dhaka, like the main city, and since they were relatively well off, like their lifestyle back there was kind of similar to like being middle class here, right? So, and my cousins they all went to English school, right? Like international schools and stuff. So it's like there's definitely a difference, but especially now with the media and social media, it's like if you talk to like a Gen Z from there, like they don't sound or think all that different from like a Gen Z here. Right. So it's
Interesting.
becoming really
I see. Yeah.
globalized. So say for my parents, it's like okay, in the beginning there was like a bit of an adjustment, culturally things were different. Um and then like but then for my generation, say my cousins and stuff, there wasn't really that much of a difference. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, like things are a little different here, but it's like we've seen social media, we've seen stuff on TV, we've seen Instagram and TikTok, so it's
So
like
that's wild that technology really connected your
yeah,
family from so far away. Like there's hardly a difference that you could even tell. So
yeah,
that's cool
yeah.
to hear.
So yeah, so it's cool to see like, and also like here, in like the US or Canada, people are more aware of like South Asian cultures as well. So it's like, like the blending, at least from what I saw, the blending didn't really have um that many barriers.
You know, in our past episodes, like Tiff and the common theme that we've seen is kind of like your parents creating a career path for you or wanting you to date a person within your culture. Was that the same for you growing up? Or
Kind of. So like dating wise, I personally didn't have too much of an interest in dating. I was like super focused on my career all throughout my 20s. So like now like my parents are like, "Oh, you're like falling behind. Like when are you going to get a girlfriend?"
Parents
So-
pressure there.
so-
it is.
So there's definitely a bit of that, and it's like like a lot of my cousins, they're like getting married and stuff. So yeah, like they definitely prefer someone with the same culture. But they do acknowledge that like I'm not 100% like that culture. So like their preference is kind of like, oh, someone kind of like me who's like Bengali but like grew up in the US or Canada kind of situation. Yeah. And I like academic wise, like they were fairly strict. But it's more so less pressure and more so of like just trying to set an example, right? Like as in like they'd say, oh, like you could like this, like this profession does this or that profession does that, or it's like, oh, like this person that I know, like one of my friends or family members is in that profession. So it's like trying to like expose me to high achieving people. That was kind of it. It wasn't like, I know some immigrant parents are a lot more direct. It's like, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. They were more like they definitely had pressure, but it was more like indirect. It's like, oh, like everyone in our family is like like went to university, like that's just normal for us. So like you have to go too. Right. So like oh, like half the people in our family have like graduate degrees. It's like, oh, maybe you should get one too, right? Like, it's like, oh, like your uncle's like a top physician in Bangladesh. Your other uncle's like a banker there and stuff. So it's like, it's kind of like that. Like, I hate to use the word, but like kind of like the Ivy League family pressure that you get here.
Yeah.
Like, like, Ivy League families where it's like, oh, like your uncle went to Harvard and your aunt went to MIT, like you have to,
follow in their footsteps.
Footsteps. So
Yeah.
The expectations are still there.
yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
So,
Curious to know, how do you share your cultural background with others who may not be familiar with it?
yeah. I mean, like, I'm open about it. Like I have, so, pretty much like most of my friends, they're from immigrant families as well. So it's like, and Toronto growing up was very multicultural. So it was like, we'd kind of share like about our culture. Like I'd share about my culture and I'd listen to what they have in their culture and kind of have like a little bit of a mix of like, oh, like these are things that are similar and like these are things that are different. And, we'd kind of like, some things we'd laugh about and stuff like that, joke about. So, yeah, it's kind of just like being open and trying to connect with people from other cultures as well. So,
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think that's how we connected too.
Yeah.
Like just the curiosity. So I love hearing that, it's multicultural and you're able to grow up in a community with your culture and other cultures as well.
Yeah.
So we're all learning here. It's all a learning experience. But like when you're younger in school, like, did your parents like make you like lunch with like Bengali food? Like I know Tiff talked about this like one time and she was like bringing like Filipino food to school. Did you have that type of experience or
Okay.
were other kids like, what's that, Moody?
I mean, so like, I think by the time I grew up, I probably grew up a little bit later than you guys. And being in Toronto, like that was more of a positive thing.
Oh, okay.
It was like, oh, okay, like, oh, that food smells really good, kind of thing. So it was actually kind of the opposite, where like Bengali food it tastes really good, but it's hard to make.
Okay.
So like for lunch, it's like, okay, like I'll eat Bengali food at home, but for like a school lunch, my mom would just pack something simple because it would just be like way too much effort.
Yeah.
So then it was like more of a treat if I got Bengali food or like, so it was kind of like a positive thing. Whereas like, like I had another, like a Indian friend, like, if their mom packed them like biryani and stuff, they would be like, "Oh, damn, that's so good! You got such a good
jealous.
lunch." We were like jealous.
It's a different vibe. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I do notice. Yeah, nowadays like Filipino food is way more like they know what it is and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool! You have lumpia for like lunch or whatever." So it's like now it's more.
Yeah.
I guess
I love trying like
I'd love to try
other cultures' food.
Mhm,
Yeah,
exactly. Anytime I visit anywhere too, it's like I go for the food. I want to eat this local food to immerse in the culture, and it's different,
Yeah.
So that's so great to hear that
Yeah.
people were jealous of your lunch.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think there was a big shift like starting in like the 2000s. Like I think that's when it's like, oh, okay, like, immigrants started becoming like cool and stuff.
You heard it here.
We're
You heard it here
trending.
from Moody. Yes.
Do you know how to cook Bengali food?
I mean, no.
Oh, okay. Dang, I was like,
I
ooh, we could
know.
have some.
Or
Bengali
how
food.
about, is there a good Bengali restaurant in LA?
I'm
we
not
should be checking out.
So I'm not sure. There's a lot in Toronto. LA doesn't have as big of a Bengali community, but there could be some. Like for that stuff, I usually go to we have like a really close family friend here in LA that my parents know. So whenever I go to their house, I just get like the home cooked stuff.
That's so
Oh,
good.
nice.
Yeah.
That's clutch. You need
Yeah.
that. You need the family friend,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
So
home cooked meal. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, come on, LA. Let's get some Bengali
I
food up in
know.
here.
Yeah,
Or
seriously.
shout it out. Let us know where to get it.
Yeah. Actually, that could be one of our questions.
Yeah.
Nova Place?
Yeah.
All right. We should all check out.
I guess then for you coming to LA and you came here for work, and how was that transition from Toronto and coming out here? Was it like cultural shock or kind of
I mean,
similar? 'Cause
like-
it's like a melting pot.
so
but-
there's similarities, but it's also very different. Like so the multiculturalism is fairly similar, right? But the city itself is really different, right?
because it's so vast here.
Yeah,
It's not concentrated as
it's definitely
Toronto.
warmer. It's definitely not as centralized. You know, Toronto you could think of as like New York City. Like it's like the New York of Canada.
Okay.
You know, it's like multicultural but like cold and like centralized place. You know, like you could take the subway like around downtown anywhere. Downtown was kind of like the place to be. Whereas here it's like you have a whole it's like spread out. You have a whole bunch of clusters. Most people drive everywhere. But you know, I like it. I like the weather, the nature, the hiking. I've gotten into hiking here.
Yes.
So yeah, like the environment here is just very different. But and also there's like much more of an old Hispanic culture, which is really prevalent. Versus in Toronto, it's like the Hispanic culture isn't really there. It's more like there are Hispanics, but they're more just like newer immigrants, and they just kind of blend in with the other immigrants. Whereas here, it's like they have like a thing of like their own. Like I think they're like a majority in parts of LA. So that was interesting.
But in terms of immigration, I mean, it sounds like from your family's experience, they all ended up in Canada, Toronto. Was it because it was harder to get in the U.S.? I'm not really sure how to ask this question, but like, was there kind of like politics behind that, or can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, yeah. So in general, it's definitely easier to immigrate to Canada
Okay.
than it is to the U.S. So I guess like back in the day, a long time ago, more people came to the U.S. But recently, Canada's getting a lot more immigrants. Politically, they have more immigrant-friendly policies. And then like the last few years, they had like a record high number of immigrants. They took in like 500,000 immigrants in 1 year.
Oh wow.
So it ended up creating a situation where like in a short amount of time there ended up being a housing crisis,
Oh.
and housing just became extremely expensive. But I mean, like it'll balance itself out over time. But yeah, also international students are a big thing there. So the college, like the undergrad program that I went to, it had like majority international students. Like 60% of them were foreign students. So they also so a lot of people go there to study and then stay there afterwards. So that's so you see a lot of like, you know, like 20-something-year-olds who came in as students from another country.
Okay, that's a great perspective. I didn't realize that that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
neither did I. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you for sharing that.
it's really big. Yeah, so now like it has been like a political debate because of the rising housing costs. So they did curb the immigration a little bit
Mm.
now. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a balance.
Everywhere.
I know.
Housing
And I thought
crisis.
LA had like high costs for housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Toronto is now just as expensive as LA.
Oh wow.
In some cases it could be more
Oh wow. Okay.
expensive.
Huh. Good to know. Since you've been living or you've lived in both Canada and the US now, I mean, politically, I mean, what do you think? What are the differences?
Yeah,
What do you think?
like here it's definitely much more divided.
Mm.
Yeah, like I'd say like Canada politically is a lot more liberal just overall. Like the Canadian Conservative Party is like um would be considered like moderate here, right? So it's definitely, and here I think it's like a wider range of what people believe. So yeah, like you know, with the results from the recent election and everything going on, um, like Canadians now uh, are not big fans of the U.S. politically. Uh, you know, with Trump saying he wants to make Canada a 51st state and doing tariffs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, like at least talking to people back home, like they're not happy
Mm-hmm.
with that. So now they have kind of like a Canadian pride moment going on,
Ah, okay.
where it's like, you know, like yeah, we're Canadian, we don't need to rely on the U.S.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I mean, I can't blame them, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So, but it's kind of weird because like I came to the U.S., so I'm a Canadian living in the U.S. and working in the U.S. So it's like it feels kind of weird, where it's like, okay, like I want things that are good for Canada, but I also want things that are good for the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is at least, you know, the more liberal half of the country, they don't necessarily agree with what's going on. So I think there is like a common ground or a common interest we can agree on.
Right.
So
Right. That you could connect with.
yeah,
And you
So-
you don't feel as like, oh, I'm alone here.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are feeling and thinking the same.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yes.
yeah. I guess like why don't you, like you guys, share.
Us?
Like
guess.
share how you think of say like immigration and what's going on right now and like what your perspective of it is right now.
There's so many opinions around it, and I want to support like my friends and family, even though I don't agree with some of their opinions. But I think it all comes down to respect, right? Yeah, so that's kind of my perspective. What about you, Tiff? Deep thoughts here.
Very deep. I mean, we are children of immigrants, and I do believe like our family members came out here for a better future for us, and I feel like they were super successful. Like there's so many blessings. I say thank you every morning now, waking up.
Yeah.
With everything that's going on, just grateful that our immigrants' parents provided a better life than their home country. I do believe like this country has been built on immigrants. So much hard work and dedication, and
Kind of
it's
bouncing
lighter.
off of that. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, you're right. There's so many immigrants who've contributed to the good of this society, and I think that that's something to be celebrated. You know,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that feel differently about that. That immigrants have come here to take their jobs, whatever it is. But from my perspective, it's like we've learned to assimilate. We're, depending on whatever your education level is or lack thereof, there's always like a drive, I think, in immigration families, like the drive to do better, to be successful. Like the desire and the drive is there, whether they have the opportunity or not. I mean, that's the heartbreaking part, right? I mean, there's some families that just can't afford to go to college, so they do the best they can with what they have. And I respect that 100%. I think immigrants are so hardworking. We come from backgrounds where, like you said, it's just they didn't have the opportunities. So for me, I'm like, I respect that 100% and I support them, you know. But that's because I came from a family that of immigrants. Now, being born in the U.S., I mean, some people think, "Oh, you're so spoiled. You got to go to college. You had all these opportunities." And as I have gotten older, I'm like, I still have to look back at like my parents, my ancestors, and kind of, I still want to make them proud. You know, again, it's like that pressure of like making our ancestors proud. So, me, 100%, I support just all the hard work, all the opportunities that we've had that other people don't. Yeah.
I didn't.
Good question though, Moody.
That's
Putting us on. I love it.
very great
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really great.
No,
question.
I definitely
You're
agree
hosting
with.
now. You're the host.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Table turn.
You're all like, I'm so nervous. I've never done this before. I'm like, dude, you're a natural. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with both of you.
Yeah.
I've always been pro-immigration. That's what makes Canada, U.S. That's what makes these countries great. And yeah, like, everyone at some point was an immigrant here, right? And and we need all kinds of immigrants, right? So, like economically, culturally, right? Rich, poor, whatever part of the world you come from, right? Like they all contribute together to a society. I know there's a lot of talk in politics right now about the right kind of immigrant and the wrong kind of immigrant. I don't really believe in that. In order to have a good society, we need all kinds of immigrants.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
I
Well
agree.
said.
Yeah.
Well said.
yeah.
Instagram.
I think like keeping with the theme is like, oh, like what do you think the future of immigration is going to look like now? Like do you see a positive future or do you see it like going in a weird direction?
Yeah. That's a great question.
All right.
That's a great question.
Super great
So-
question. So DM us on our IG at first_gen_podcast. If I didn't get that right, Tiff will put it on the bottom of the screen.
And you could also check us out on YouTube. We're now finally on YouTube.
Yes, we are.
All our previous episodes are now on YouTube, so check it out. This episode will be on YouTube, so please like, subscribe, leave us a comment, engage with us. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much, Moody,
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
sharing your journey. And all
Yeah, no, it
episodes.
was a lot of fun
Yes.
talking to you guys.
Love it.
Love it.
Until next time,
All right. Bye.
take care.
Bye.